Like, imagine Inspire. How would you feel if the president of the United States came to you and go, hey, could you really use your help? If you could come and take on the best warrior of said country, you would keep us from sending thousands of our soldiers to war against them. How would you feel if President Trump did that right now?
I would feel a little nervous.
Just a little?
A lot nervous.
He was definitely someone who was after God's heart, but he had a lot of times where the opposite was reflected. And it's cool to see him always go back. Not as quickly as other times, but, in the end, it was reflected that he loved God and he wanted to follow after him.
We talked about grown-up lesson. We talked about foreskins. We talked about sex outside of marriage. We talked about sex on rooftops today. That was not on any flannel graph, Lily, when I was... No. It would be very inappropriate.
Yeah.
We're really excited about the topic today. We got a brand new series we're kicking off. It is Sunday School Lessons for Adults. We're growing up your Sunday School lessons. Those things in Sunday school class that you went to and someone put it on a felt board and you had to watch them like take these one-dimensional characters and say, hey, this guy last week was David, but this week it's Noah and his bow, and they tell these stories. It was modern technology at the time. We're trying to grow those up and tell you the complete story that you can have application to your story. Because if you just leave it as, oh, look, it all worked out for that guy, because that's how the Sunday school lessons were always taught to us. It always worked out for that girl, but we missed all the adult versions of the things that aren't attainable for little people. We have Lily. She's holding the felt board today. This is felt material, Lil.
Yes.
Have you ever used the felt board to teach anything to anyone?
No, never.
What's your thoughts on the felt material? Would you sleep with that?
Yes,
Would you make
it's very
a blanket?
soft. It's a lot like fleece.
Fleece.
Nice.
Is it like, do you think it's a close to flannel as I'm wearing flannel today?
Yeah, well, I felt when I got this, I felt all of those different materials, and flannel's not as soft or thick.
Okay, there you go. Flannel is interesting because it was considered modern technology where you would just adhere another thing made out of flannel. There's no Velcro involved, no static electricity, folks. It was just straight flannel to flannel. We have a special guest, never been on the show before. He is here to just digest information today and then spew it back to us.
Oh,
His
I
name
can't
is
wait.
Inspire. Inspire, how are you doing today?
Great. How are you doing?
Wonderful. How is it to be in the studio today for your first time on camera with a microphone?
Good.
I like your choices of your Funko Pops, and I like how you've distributed them across
let's
your
see those.
desk randomly. Why? Why so random?
I wanted I don't know, I just kind of just started playing.
I think they look good. They're all like in their positions.
They look like they're about to attack.
Yeah.
Like whereas mine are all clustered together because they're forming a plan right now
What is the
to
pink
attack.
one? I don't recognize that.
Yeah, who is that?
What is that?
It's Miles in a different universe. Well, Spider-Man.
But it's
So that's
a
Spider-Man.
female
We got to
version
move it over. Move it over a little bit
So in the camera in your shot,
there you
they
go.
can see it.
They can see it better there.
because it's the Spider-Man universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We're not bringing him on just to talk about those things. He's going to be an intricate part of our conversation today. Sunday School Lessons for Adults. We are starting with an old but goodie. One that, I mean, you don't even have to have grown up in the church. You've heard. Recently, Amazon just brought to the television set a series about King David and foretelling of the moment in his life that most people will recite in athletics. And anytime they feel like they're underdog, it's the David and Goliath story. Well, that's the flannel graph version. We're going to grow that really fast up. But here is taking the flannel graph version into modern technology, the digital age, everyone. Here's what that telling would look like in 30 seconds or less if you don't know the David and Goliath story. Here you go. 30 seconds. Go. The digital age. Right there. 30 seconds
good.
are left. Come on, Les. That's awesome.
Yeah, when we watched it earlier, Inspire, you were like, was that him getting his
head cut off?
His head cut, or him cutting off the Goliath's head? Right?
Yeah.
You didn't grow up in Sunday school flannel boards because they never shared that part. That David actually took the head of the giant with the giant's own sword. That's not portrayed in the flannel graph
Sunday
version.
school.
Yeah, Sunday school.
Got
it was
it.
just that David
that's
took him
a
out.
little too violent.
Right,
Got
right.
it.
Too, like a little too much. Like, hey, Mom and Dad, we learned about David and Goliath, and David took off Goliath's head. Right? Like, could you imagine that being told?
Yeah, it's just David beat the giant.
Correct.
That's
right,
what they get told.
So, this week was my birthday. I turned 47. And
How was your birthday?
It was great. We decided to do the cake a little bit different, didn't we, Spy? What did you think of the way we did the cake for my birthday this year?
I liked it.
Yeah? Like, that's all you got?
Like, that's all you
Bro,
just
for a man that
liked
talks
it?
uncontrollably and asks 99 questions, you got nothing on camera today.
Well,
Is this the cure to you? Just have a camera going and a mic in front of you, and you'll be talking sensible.
no.
What
Okay.
did you like about the cake?
Here's the cake though. We had Hostess, right? Little Debbie. That's like, you can't do that to Little
I don't-
Debbie.
is-
Hostess is like the competitor.
The competitor? Oh, okay.
Yeah. But here's what I was going
How
to
did
bring
you
up.
do that in a cake?
Well,
How did
Holly
that
was really
work?
creative. She stacked them all up, unpacked
Amazing.
them, put 47
She's
candles in
amazing.
it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I about burned my face because there's so much. It's full on a bonfire on
That's
top of this
cool.
with 47
Holly,
cakes.
she's so creative.
Yeah, she's wonderful. But I haven't had these in decades, and I was just saddened by the fact of how little they are. I can't imagine my hands, my
The oatmeal
paws.
cream pie looks little.
Little.
But the others look normal to
Oh no,
me.
this is little.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
This is teeny weeny.
Wow. That's why you have two.
No,
Yeah.
you always got two, and they were big. They were
Wow.
like. This
Why
is
do you
like,
think that is?
there is a term for this that
okay.
they charge the same or up it a little bit, but it takes less to make because it's smaller.
Yeah.
It's like you get less in your cereal, you get less marshmallows,
Chips.
Yeah.
It's the
Chips.
same. It's
right? Diminishing of something. But anyway, this was my cake and it was awesome, but I was saddened by how small it was, and the proportion of oatmeal to frosting in here, little, is not good.
So what did you actually eat?
This
You ate
is
one
all I
of
really
those?
want. One.
You ate one.
Yeah. Maybe two. I can't remember. But one. I haven't had one again. Okay, Lil,
That's
you were
great.
eyeing them the minute I brought them in today.
Yeah,
Lily,
but I don't need it.
Which one would you like?
I don't want it.
No, what one do you want?
I would choose the zebra cake. Thank you.
Bye. Here you go for your time today. That's how we're paying our people today, is in Little Debbie. Thank you, Lily Debbie, for sponsoring today's episode. We're so glad you took your time to grace us with your food. Okay.
Hashtag ad.
Yeah, it wasn't a real ad. We are not sponsored by Little Debbie. Okay, here's what we've got today. We're going to use Inspire really quick to illustrate something, and we're going to see if this comes across. Inspire, we're going to interview you really quick. You ready to be interviewed?
Yes.
Favorite color, go.
Green.
Favorite movie, go.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Favorite superhero?
Miles.
That's not a superhero.
Spider-Man.
Thank you.
If you were going to say a different superhero, I was going to
Yeah,
be
it was going to be
confused.
hilarious, right?
Yeah.
Size shoe.
4.5.
Okay, while you're being interviewed, you can't crinkle the plastic. That's put your treat on the table. There you go. Your birthday is when?
February 14th.
February 14th. What day is that also?
Valentine's.
Okay. Do you have a Valentine's?
No.
Okay. Do you want a Valentine's?
Not right now.
Good call. Okay, great. Favorite animal?
Jaguar.
Favorite pet?
My dog, Solo.
Okay.
And Wookie.
Favorite type of weather?
Ooh.
Snow.
Favorite state?
Minnesota.
Favorite dad?
Dad.
You got to think about that one.
Yeah,
Hold
you
on.
did kind of have to think about. Was that
Boy.
confusing? Was that confusing?
Yeah.
Or was it like a mix between him and like the dad from that Christmas movie you all love? No, that
Home
didn't come to
Improvement,
mind.
maybe. He might go Tim Allen. Okay, then
That's so great.
how old are you?
10.
10.
11.
Oh,
11.
yeah. I was
Oh,
gonna
you
say.
just turned 11.
Just turned 11. 11
Just a
years
couple
old.
weeks ago.
How tall are you?
I'm gonna say 4'6".
4'6".
Okay.
Is that guessing?
Yes.
Your sister's on the other side of the studio shaking their head like not a chance.
You think he's shorter? Okay.
How much
Around
do
4'6".
How much you weigh?
I'm gonna go 64 pounds.
You have a lot of fours in here. Okay, I like this. Okay, 64 pounds. You're 11,
That's so great.
11 years old, and you're 4'6".
Yep.
Young boy.
Young boy. Now, if
You're a
you're
young
going to
boy.
take on somebody that was 10 feet taller than you in a fight, what would be your choice of weapon?
The slingshot.
That would you know how to use one of those?
Nope.
But that would be your choice?
Based on,
Yeah.
but you have to know how to read it. I mean, use it, not read it. I apologize. You have to know how to
you
throw
have
the
to know
thing.
exactly how to
I've
get that
practiced
thing.
before battle.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
The reason all this interview and what it has to do is that in the story of David and Goliath, David is somewhere in the ballpark of Inspire's age.
Which is wild.
Wild when you think about it. Like, listen to him talk
go,
about his
Spy.
favorites.
Yeah.
They are little boys' thoughts and wonderful. But put his guy.
Yeah, picture it.
Like, imagine Inspire. How would you feel if the president of the United States came to you and go, hey, could you really use your help? If you could come and take on the best warrior of said country, you would keep us from sending thousands of our soldiers to war against them. How would you feel if President Trump did that right now?
I would feel a little nervous.
Just a little?
A lot nervous.
This guy's got nerves of steel. Okay. Why?
Because I'm 11 years old and I'm going to do a battle. It's nerve-wracking.
Nerve-wracking. Okay, fair. I would be honest, being close to you and involved in every area of your life right now, I would be nervous. One for you, but also the world. Okay, so would you do it if the president came to you and said, listen, Inspire, you're our only hope of saving the United States of America? Would you say yes, or would you go, maybe find somebody else?
I would say yes.
You would. Okay, how many brothers do you have?
6.
6 brothers. How about 5 brothers?
5.
You're one of the 6. You have 5 other brothers.
This is so great.
Now, how would you feel if somebody came in the house and said, listen, Inspire, you've been chosen to be the next president of the United States. They didn't choose any of your other brothers. How would you feel?
I would feel, I don't know, I would feel good about myself.
You would? Now, do you think your brothers would, like, applaud you? Like, yeah.
Or, do you think they'd be excited for you or jealous?
I'm excited for
Excited.
Mixed emotions.
We probably should
Mixed
interview them on that, because I have a
emotions.
feeling Legend
The
would not
oldest would
Yeah.
struggle for
Yeah,
sure.
he'd be on the struggle bus. He'd be like, what?
Yeah, mixed emotions.
Yeah,
like
I think
you
it's
said.
fair answer. Okay, Inspire, that's all we needed from you today. You did a great job. You are free to go, because here's the deal. If we leave you here, you're going to be having your own little battle with your Funko Pops on the stage. It'd be super distracting.
I wondered.
And so,
good job, Spy.
we also, to make Inspire appear taller than he is, we will actually give you his real height here. Inspire, would you put it on the widescreen really quick for us? Inspire, please take off the little booster seat we put there. He's going to take it off, and as he does that, he will hop back on there. This gives you... Okay, now just stand there really quick. Come back into camera. Put the close shot back on him. Here's his height, everyone. Okay, this is going to give you good
awesome,
perspective.
Spy.
Okay, now get in the chair.
Yep, here we have our modern day Goliath.
Yeah, modern day David. This would have portrayed him littler. I think putting him on the little booster has portrayed him as
you looked bigger with the booster.
But here's the reality of it. This guy, 11 years old, you have just been chosen to defend the United States against a foe of giants. And you're only a little nervous, right?
A little more than that.
Oh, okay. Thank you again. Put your hands together
You
for
rock,
Inspire Joshua
Spy.
J, everybody.
So good.
Hit the road, my friend. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. It really
that was
is
a good visual.
setting up.
Yeah.
I think we forget. I think that little cartoon tried to portray it as best it can, but still kind of a funny-ish.
He's taking his
Oh, yeah.
treat.
Cleaned his desk off, everyone. Look at his desk. He's opening up the door. He's hitting the road. Look. He's hitting the road. You can see it, but he's like...
That was a great shot. That was great.
He's like...
He took his treat and everything.
He took everything. He's like, I can't trust those guys with my Funko Pops.
He's like, this is my reward.
Yeah.
I didn't even kill the giant yet, and I got
but it feels like he
rewarded.
did because he was on camera.
Yeah, that was
talking
exciting for
intelligently.
him.
So let's jump into today's topic: Sunday school lessons for adult. I think we got a thumbnail of that, so you can see the branding of it. We're really excited to bring it to you. We really think it's going to grow up your understanding of what these stories are for adults. Sunday school lessons for adults. Because here's the deal. If you don't grow up your Sunday school lessons to adulthood, your childlike faith, which we're supposed to have, but the childlike faith you had that's on the stories of it always works out for the main character, it doesn't seem to be working out for me. Mm-hmm. You begin to deconstruct your faith based on Sunday school lessons that you didn't grow up. So today, and over the next few weeks, we're going to grow up your Sunday school faith into adulthood, and today is a doozy. It's a doozy, everybody. One of the cool things I want to bring to you is from an archaeological dig. That's right, we're starting there. In 1993, Lily, when I told you this, you were like, wait, you asked like 3 times.
It seems late.
Do you think people aren't
Or,
digging?
I mean, recent.
Right, but it's also late, and but it depends what time
both.
period you're coming from.
Yeah.
But when I said the dates, you were like, did you think we don't still dig?
No, I know we still dig. I've heard, you can go to a certain place and dig up pottery that people used to smash in biblical times because they smashed so much. But I just, something like this is pretty cool.
Pretty wild.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with an archaeological dig in Israel. In 1993, they found a rock. Now, back in the day of King David, they would write things and make journal entries, or when David wrote his Psalms, it was in a lot of times rocks. That's how we've been able to send these things down through histories, because rock doesn't decompose very quick or dissolve, or however, an archaeological term would be there. And so when we find these things, we can confirm things we've had. Now, up until 1993, the only history books that mention David was the Bible. Now, let's just fully unpack that idea. Israel as a nation used the Bible as their founding history books. So there was no reason to add on in history books. The Bible was it. It wasn't called the Bible at the time, but it was how they recorded the things. But people that have tried to debunk or tell you that the Bible isn't true have discredited the Bible so far that you needed some outside source other than the Bible in 2025 to say it's real or not real. That was the case in the early 80s all the way to now. So 1993, this rock is found. We're going to put it on your screen for you. This rock, now you're going to look at it and go,
Yeah. What is that?
yay, a rock with squiggly lines and triangles and Z's and Y's. That's Hebrew. What you see in white, it's very important that your eyes go to almost the center of the rock, to your center, maybe right and down. Find the right white letters. That is Hebrew for the word King David, or the kingdom, or the house of David. The house of David is that. It's important for you and I to understand this, because it's coming back into the studio here. The Tel Dan inscription is what it's referred to, is the first historical evidence of King David from the Bible. That inscription is the house of David. In 1993, at the site of Tel Dan in northern Israel, is an excavation directed by an Israelite archaeologist, and I can't pronounce his name, who finds that.
That's what the show on Amazon's called too. House of David.
House of David.
That's cool.
Because in history, that's what, when armies would take on David, before he had the entire Israel, it was the house of David, which is pretty powerful. Which brings credibility to the stories we're about to say and the life we're going to use of King David. He's a real man, really existed, went through the things we're about to download you. See already, growing up your faith.
Yeah.
You immediately have resources. If somebody says, well, David's not a real thing, he's a fictional character in the Bible, wrong. The other thing that grows up your faith, maybe you haven't connected it, is this King David, the house of David we're talking about, is the line in which Jesus was born. I almost said 1,000 years. I can't remember precisely how many years between here. I have looked that up and I just cannot remember it.
From David's
kingdom to Jesus' kingdom,
yeah.
right? I don't remember the gap.
1,000 something.
I know that there's a 400-year silence between the last book of New Testament to this, but so we know it's hundreds of years at least. I do want to start with the end. And then we're going to go back up. Okay, the end. We're going to go to Acts chapter 13, verse 22. This is the end. This is a statement that I think all of us would agree we'd love to have said about us. This is a life goal for me. It's tattooed on my body. The Acts chapter 13, verse 22, those letters and numbers are written in Greek on my body, because it is my favorite memory verse. Or a verse that I'm saying that's the target for me when it comes to my relationship with God. And this is what it says. You've heard us quote it a lot, but here it is. You can make it your life goal. Everybody should have this one. But this is what God says of David in Acts chapter 13, verse 22. Here it goes. After removing Saul, he made David their king. God testified concerning him. I have found David, son of Jesse, a man after my own heart. He will do everything I want him to do. I want it to be said that I will do everything God wants me to do. If that is moved from Illinois to Ohio to Florida, from Florida, Miami, Florida to Minnesota. I didn't do those on my own whim. Holly and I didn't do that because it was just like, oh, we want to live in multiple states. It was, we felt like we were chasing the will of God. We felt a nudge in our heart that that's where we should go. God asked us to go. We want to always be a family that is spreading the good news, that we're doing it in every sphere. That's why we're digitally here, because we want to spread the good news. We want to continue to do what God's asked us to do, even starting this online. It was a nudge. It isn't because we want to be popular or have millions of people come to church or know my name. It has nothing to do with it. It is all about, God, we want to make you famous, more famous than my name or anybody else. We want to help people connect with you. We say it a lot here at Unlock Church in this way. We want to point people to Jesus to navigate the challenges of life. We're going to point all of you to Jesus so that when you're backed up against the wall, you're going to run and do what Jesus has asked you to do. That's the simplest way I can say it. And we have found David, the first one in this Sunday school lessons for adults. We're going to use David. This dude's messy. He's complicated. Literally, if you're talking to somebody on the subway or you're on a one-wheel ride with somebody and they're just talking about this King David, how would you explain them who David is if they started with Acts chapter 13, verse 22? They're like, hey, this David guy, a man after God's own heart, he'll do everything you want to do. Is he like perfect or something? How would you explain David to somebody on a one-wheel ride?
I would say, well, he was definitely someone who was after God's heart, but he had a lot of times where the opposite was reflected. And it's cool to see him always go back, not as quickly as other times, but in the end, it was reflected that he loved God and he wanted to follow after him.
That's great. I think also, I forgot to mention this a little bit earlier when we were talking about the proof of the existence of David, because David wrote a large portion of the Psalms. If he didn't exist, then who wrote those if it's credited to this fictional character? See why it matters to have validity? Validity, thank you. To David's existence, because our Bible's packed with his way of writing to God. When he missed the mark, how he responds when he was convicted of missing the mark, when he sinned against God. And so here is we've got our cheat sheets up here. Lily put together a great timeline of David's life. My apologies. Yeah. Put it together so that we can follow. We're going to reveal it to you one at a time. We have it all sitting here. Hopefully we do our best to unpack a Sunday school lesson that is complicated. It has the dark, deep, nasty, R-rated drama packed inside this. David wasn't a good dad at times, wasn't a good husband at times, wasn't good actually at a lot of things. So what makes him a man after God's own heart? That's where we're going to get. So here we go. David was born in Bethlehem, which is a pretty big deal. You should know that. Born to the tribe of Judah, the youngest of 8 sons. So Inspire had 5 other siblings. David had 8. He obviously had other sisters. They just didn't count that in that day and age. Just so you know, in 2025 in the Middle House, we do count the daughters. We have 2, so we have a total of 8 kids in our home, just so we are clear on that. So from 0 to 10, that's all we kind of know of David. David comes into the scene really from the ages of 9 to 12. One of the most wild things happened, and we alluded to with Spy, was at around 9 to 12 years old, David was anointed king by Solomon because King Saul was an idiot, and it was over from God's like, I'm done with Saul. He's out. Find a new king. I'm out so much with David I'm so out with Saul that Saul's not even going to be king, or anyone in his bloodline's going to be king. We're going to start this thing all over. And they go to David. Tremendous story. And I think we put, do we have a scripture reference for that on the screens? I hope we did.
Yeah, 1 Samuel 16.
If we can put that up just a little bit longer, you guys might want to screenshot it as we go, or write this stuff down, because, man, I want you to know where it's found so you can go read these stories. From 12 to 16 is where we bump into the David and Goliath story. This is the story that makes David the most famous. Not that he was anointed king somewhere around the age of 9. Do you need to know the number of from he was told he's going to be king? He did not come king the next day, all right? Just so you know this. It wasn't until he was 30 years old. That's a long gap. Maybe for you and I, we're wrestling. If we can go back to the studio real quick, we're wrestling with God told me you were going to do something, or He was going to do something in your life, this relationship, and you're like, well, He told me that 2 weeks ago, and you're still pining on the fact that it's not happened yet. And God's like, listen, I didn't say when it was going to happen. I just told it was going to happen. David, anointed king. You know what David ends up going to do right after he was told he's going to be the king? He goes back to the field and was a shepherd again. Nothing actually changed. It took 30 years for God to refine David to be ready to be the king He needed him to be. And refined he was, folks. Refined, you see it when he comes out to fight David and Goliath.
That's the most well known.
What a hero story, right? Like, my goodness, you stop there and you're like, goals. Hashtag goals. Be like David, right, Lil?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
How many teachings have been done about, hey, David and Goliath, fight your giants. What are your giants and what are they squawking? I think there's a lot of parallels we can take from this story. And I've done it and I love that challenge. But if you stop there, you're going to go, I'm never going to be like David.
Yeah.
I just, that's not me. Because all you see is your fails and fails and fails. And yet to this point, if you just heard this story, David, we don't know of any of his failures yet. Right. All we know is that he killed lions and bears with his bare hands. That we know that he was one of 9 boys. But he's like, man, this guy, he must be awesome. We know he must not be the best looking because one of his brothers were better looking. So Samuel thought that was going to be the next king. And then the scriptures refer to him as a rowdy looking boy. Lily, can you explain that term? Do you even know what that means?
I feel like his hair, if he's rowdy, his hair would be like disheveled and like dirty.
You just used disheveled to explain it. Both those are complicated. Disheveled.
Like messy.
Like a mop.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my boys.
Undone. Yeah.
Any of my boys, like Legend, Inspire, and those are the 2 that have disheveled or rowdy hair. It's a little curly, a little nappy at times.
Just
and so,
not taken care of.
Yeah, it just, they don't care about it. And so that's the picture you get of David is, I think he's handsome because we see he has a way with the ladies later in his life. So he's handsome. He's just not a supermodel. And he's a warrior, which gives him this rugged look. Probably more like if I was picking like a Mel Gibson. No, is that?
I don't have a picture of him off the top of my head.
You don't have a picture of Mel Gibson? Braveheart?
Oh, sure.
That's what we should have put in there, just so everybody. Braveheart. That's what I'm saying. That was David. Okay.
Yeah.
So 1 Samuel 17 is where you can find the David and Goliath story. As soon as David and Goliath story happens, well, King Saul, it goes a little bit mad, and he needs a musician to soothe his bipolarness, and finds out that David plays the harp or the lyre, and he comes in and plays this musical instrument, which is simply his worship songs he's created and practicing in the fields. And he plays these songs and calms Samuel, or if I interchange the names, somebody just hang with me. The mad king Saul soothes him. But David still, now he's in the palace, so you got to wonder, David's still not king, but he's going, am I a step closer? I was a shepherd in the field, so far from the palace, now I'm in the palace, okay, and people kind of know me because what happened with David and Goliath situation, or David, or Goliath, I mean, and so he's trying to go, okay, I can see how God can do this. Have you ever been in a season in your life where you're like, oh, this is making sense, I'm trending towards what I feel like God's going to do, it feels like a trend upwards? Guys, in David's life, it ain't even close to reality. Right, Lil?
Yeah. There's still a lot of time.
A lot of time.
Yeah.
A lot of refining. But as David's sitting there, he's playing, okay, I'm close to the king. I don't know how this is going to happen. But he's playing the music for the king. From the ages of 20 to 30, a lot happens. From the ages of 20, somewhere around there, he becomes best friends with King Saul's son, Jonathan. They just fun to read those stories of Jonathan and David, and David trying to convince Jonathan that his dad's trying to kill him at some point because the king goes crazy and is throwing a spear at David while he's playing the music. And I've always thought about this with David. David didn't do what most of us do when spears are thrown at us, when words are exchanged. Most of us would be, if somebody throws a spear at me, well, you do what anyone would do. You pull the spear out of the wall and throw it back at him. But David doesn't. He just dodged, ducked, and ran 3 times. It wasn't just one. So you're starting to see this character come up of David. He's got a way to forgive. He has a way of not taking things into his own hands. After all, everybody, we know who he is. He's a warrior. At the age of, 12 to 16 years old, he kills a giant. Mm-hmm. So he's got this mentality of and killed bears and lions. He's probably afraid of no one. And so in this moment, he could have relied on his strength. Instead, he ducks, dodges, and runs because he wasn't about to throw a spear at a king that God anointed. The interesting thing about this, Lily, I don't know if you ever thought about this. How do we know that people in our lives aren't anointed to be in that position in our life that we're trying to eliminate them from and play God? How do we know the person we want to insult or remove because they're an obstacle in our destiny? How do we know that they're not anointed to be doing that position in our lives? Any thoughts on that, Lil?
I mean, how can we know?
So then, how could we ever dare to throw a dart or an arrow or a spear back at somebody that God anointed to be there?
Right.
Seems dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? If God doesn't, I can tell you're pondering this a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that reading from in David's time, the repercussions that were common when someone attacked you was to attack back. And from our lens, Jesus flips the script and says, if someone hurts you, pray for them. Or if someone hurts you or takes from you, give them the shirt off your back, right? And so I think it's a great thing to pair up together. Jesus's command and going, well, if someone is doing this to me, maybe God wants me to learn something and stay in it. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. I haven't thought of it as like an anointing on the other side. But when I think of Saul's story, I do see that.
Yeah, but if God is putting someone in your life to refine you, who are we to remove someone God's put there? Right. And we constantly are doing that. We constantly want to remove obstacles in our ways, but what if God put that there? So the question is, we should never move on our own agenda and our own strength to remove something. We need to let God do it. And that's so hard to do because you surrender control and no one likes to do that. But here we see David duck, dodge, and run instead of throwing the spear back when everyone else was telling us, David, what are you doing? You've taken out a giant. This guy is not even close to that height of that guy. Just throw the spear back at him. But David doesn't. Now, it's still in this gap of 20 to 30 years old. So much more happens, and we kind of got ahead of ourselves. David becomes friends with Jonathan, like we said. Jonathan and David, so much good friends. And David becomes such a great warrior that Saul has no choice but to make David in charge of the military. So Saul makes him in charge of the military. David goes off and has all these military accolades. He's just wiping out Philistine after Philistine tribes. He's taking over and extending the boundaries. He's taking over countries and villages and expounding the boundaries of Israel. Any king would love to have someone like David on their side because he's taking the boundaries of their kingdom and making it bigger. Mm-hmm. But one thing that triggers the mad king to go crazy on David was one afternoon, David comes back into Israel, into Jerusalem, and the locals start chanting in this saying, Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands. And this drew Saul to the spot where he was going to kill David. So in the timeline of things, this is what triggers the jealousy was, Saul, cool, you've killed 1,000, David's 10,000. And so Saul hated it and compared himself. Again, we can learn in David's life, the adult version, it's dangerous to compare yourself. It will make you mad and despise somebody that's actually might potentially be helping you, that God put in your life to further your kingdom. Again, the adult version of growing up these Sunday school lessons is to take all this and start making the application in your life and go, oh, that's a little bit of me, and to clean the house. So from 30 to 40, you would go, okay, David is on the run for the 25 to 30 years old. He's on the run from Saul. He's on the run, hiding in caves. He's duck diving and weaving from the army of Saul, just hunting down one man that Saul couldn't do it. At one point, Saul comes into a cave to go to the bathroom, and David is in the cave, and his men are hiding there. And the men are like, this is it. God's delivered him into your hands. This is your chance. Kill him, and you can be the king. Because in those days, if you killed the king, you're the next king. And so David crawls towards King Saul, and convicted by even the notion in his heart to kill him, he cuts off a corner of his robe and then crawls back into the darkness. And as Saul goes out of the cave, David comes out on the cliff edge of the cave and shouts, "King Saul, I could have killed you today. But you're the anointed one, and who am I to remove the anointed one that God put in your place?" And he apologizes for even cutting off a corner of his robe. And still at this point in the story of David, you're going, this guy's a superhero. This is as Inspire was talking about his Marvel characters and Spider-Man and Miles. Like you can't match up to it. It's impossible. But here's David coming out and seemingly behaving in a nature that no human would, breaks down in tears and sobs for even touching the king's robe.
Yeah, he has a good heart.
He's got, right? Like, I can't match this. And this is where our adult faith has got to grow up and go, there's more to this. We're just getting to see behind the skin of David in his heart and in his motives. And why God would say he's a man after my own heart. Because in these moments, he was moving in a direction to kill him, was convicted, which is I got to change my action. And he changes. And in the process of what he was about to do, he felt so much remorse and apologetic to the king, he breaks down and sobbed. And Saul's response is, "We'll no longer hunt for you." And if you read through the story, you know this is not true. He keeps hunting him and trying to take out his life. Well, at age 30, King Saul dies. David becomes king, but not of Israel. He only becomes king of a small portion of Israel, Judah. For 7.5 years, he is got this small kingdom.
So then at that point, who's king of Israel if Saul has passed?
A lot of I can't fully directly answer that because I think if we unpack that, there's a lot of different kings moving around and different things happening in that moment. There were still some of Saul's relatives still living and things of that nature.
I see.
And so he moves in and becomes king of Judah. And he has a lot of success in that time. But it's for 7.5 years he has a reign there. Between the ages of 37, 38 years old, he is made king over the whole Israel. He brings it all together. He conquers Jerusalem, which he has to march in there, and there's a small skirmish, and he unites this thing, which is one interesting fact here. Under David's reign, you're going to have to, for those who are reading through your Bible through the year, and we're learning about they're about to go to the promised land, and you're in Deuteronomy, and it's like, okay, repeat for the 4th chapter here, or the 4th time of Moses talking about this stuff, but they're about to go get the promised land, but spoiler, they don't get it all. They didn't clean out all the idols, and they weren't obedient, and they never got all the promised land. And it isn't until David's reign do the Israelites get the promised land. Just food for thought, everybody. It's a long time between the book of Joshua to 1 Samuel before we see that David comes along and brings that all together, which is pretty wild. You can find where David is made king over all of that in 2 Samuel chapter 5. We get to 40 years old. David, a man after God's own heart, he attempts 2 times to bring the Ark of the Covenant into the temple that was close to Jerusalem. At the time of King David, there were 2 temples, both manned by their own priest. You can look up why that was, but David wanted the Ark of the Covenant to come from the temple that was further out of town, closer into town. He attempts one, and people die because he disrespects the presence of God, doesn't carry it right. He leaves it into a city. The city grows and flourishes, and that's why David was like, I want this in Jerusalem. So he learns and studies on how the proper way to handle the Ark of the Covenant is, does it right, does all the sacrifices on its way back into Jerusalem, and brings it back into Jerusalem. Massive party happening, big deal happening. This is where David dances undignified in front of the entire nation because he's so in love with God and what God's doing. So much distinguishment on his part that his wife, Michal, he says, "Oh, look at you. You look like a mad king yourself today. You undignified yourself as king. You were dancing around equivalently in your underwear." And David writes off Michal, who was one of the rewards for killing Goliath. And there's a whole story there on how he had to continue to fight for her. Wild story. Like I thought about telling you, but because of time, I'm not going to. It's a wild story. Just read
You know a lot about David.
Like, why are you saying
You just
that?
are doing a good job of like, it's like a documentary.
But I hope it's not boring because there's a lot of talking.
I don't think it's boring. I actually like having this in front of me as we go through this. So hopefully you've been enjoying seeing it on the screen.
And I'm trying to grow, again, and trying to put pockets of application in there, but trying to grow it up for everybody, that who this David is. And you're still going, a lot of success. No, you missing some of these things. David didn't want anyone to die when the Ark of the Covenant was coming into the city. That broke his heart. That's why he stopped. He didn't force it and go, let's just continue to kill more people. I'm the king, just get more people to carry this thing. He's like, hold on. It didn't go right. How are we going to get this? He was told he was going to get Michael, his first wife, and then Saul lies to him so he doesn't get her. And Saul says, if you do this, you'll get her, and he lies again. There's a lot of things in his life that weren't going well, but he never turned his back on God. He never ran from God. That's the piece you guys got to understand. And in your life, you're looking at, my back's up against the wall, my marriage, this, my job, that. Are you actually a man or a woman after God's own heart? Or have you stiff-armed God and not continued to do everything he wants you to do? Remember, that's the qualification. A man after God's own heart, when God is going to say that about you, is that you'll do everything he wants you to do. Did you quit the job when God said, quit the job? Did you start a job when God said, quit the job? Did you walk on a job without even knowing if God wanted you to walk out on the job? And God's up there rolling his eyes. Look, you're building your own kingdom. You don't even care what I have to say. You're just upset with this person, and you walk out. I mean, that is a common thing for heaps of people in life, is if I'm irritated, this is God telling me I'm out. Look at David's life. He's got a lot. He didn't walk out on Saul. Mm-hmm. He stayed there because he's like, no, God put me here. I got to keep going because we're going to get to one last prayer. And so he brings in, got the Ark of the Covenant back into the town. Big party happens. Wild events happen there. After 40, we get into 50 years, around 50 years old. He gets old. He's got a lot of achievement. Gets blindsided a little bit by pride. Forgets that God has established his kingdom. And he isn't where he's supposed to be. He sends his army off in the spring to go conquer the lands. And David's up on his porch or up on the roof looking around. Sees a hot girl bathing. He's the king, so he goes to his people and says, hey, go get this woman, Bathsheba. I always find it odd that they named her Bathsheba because she's found in a bath.
Said that we should name our child after her.
They did?
Yeah, one of my students.
I don't know about that one.
I think they think they were joking.
Yeah, maybe it would. But her name's Bathsheba, found in a bath. That's what always gets me.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's just weird. I get it.
Sheba might have been like the name, and then they sometimes do that.
Maybe they do that. I don't know. That's fair. I've never looked that up.
I don't know.
But she, she's brought into David. David does stupidity, gives into his own desires, and sleeps with her. Not once, a couple times, really just gets caught into the lust and finds out she's pregnant. Brings her husband back from the front lines of the battle where David was supposed to be in hopes that he would go sleep with her so he can cover up his deal. Yeah, all right, it's good. Yeah. He sleeps with her. They'll know there's no DNA test of these days, so I've covered up a multitude of sins. Well, he's an upright guy and doesn't go back with his wife. He's like, David brings him back to the palace the first night, goes, hey, how was it with your wife? He's like, oh, I slept with the guards out at the wall. And David's like, why? He's like, who am I to have come back to here and wine and dine and get a comfortable bed when all of my soldiers are out fighting this fight and living and sleeping on the ground? Mm-hmm. And David, more irritated, thought, well, here's what I'm going to do. Invite him back, get him drunk, and surely if he's drunk, he still didn't do what David wanted to do. David's so infuriated by this guy that David gives him a letter with the king's seal on it, gives it to him, and says, give it to the guy in charge out there. It's a death sentence. He's carrying his own death sentence, gives it to him, and this is what it reads. Hey, when the battle is the most fierce, I want you to put Bathsheba's husband right there, and then I want you to pull the front line back by him. David commits a murder. So you have murder and adultery happening right around the age of 50, and you can find that throughout I think it's the end of 1 Samuel into 2 Samuel, all of a sudden tarnishing that little boy, that 9-year-old anointed king, 15-year-old killing a giant that we have all sat in Sunday school going, man, that guy's so perfect. And you're starting to see, not so perfect. Got caught into temptation. Thought because he was the king, he could do what he could do. And he's made a mess. Lily, do you know who comes in and tells David that he is really an idiot in this spot? Do you remember the name of the guy?
Nabal?
No, that's a fair name.
That's with Abigail.
That's Abigail.
No, I don't know.
It's Nathan.
Oh, no, yes,
meets with the king often. And this is tremendous, the way Nathan comes to the king. Because, do you just roll up into the king's life and you tell him
Nathan,
off?
Yeah.
So Nathan comes in and gives this story, and here's the story Nathan tells. And as I'm telling the story historic, if you can kind of go to the wide shot and stuff, so we keep the cameras moving, or people are going to fall asleep at home or log off, that would be, you can move to the wide shot here to keep everybody entertained. I know we're giving you a lot of information, and I feel but it has to be done to grow up your faith. It won't be like this every week. So Nathan comes to David and says, David, there's this man that has only one sheep. And he loved that sheep. He got it when it was a little lamb, and he raised it up. It's like his own, ate from his own table. His neighbor had an entire flock, a herd of sheep. And the wealthy man, had a friend come in, and he needed a lamb or a sheep for dinner. And he goes to the neighbor's house who had the one, and he slaughters that and feeds that little lamb, that little sheep, to his guests. David cuts off Nathan and says, who is this man? He should pay for what he's done. That is awful. Fuming, picking up his sword, and Nathan says in a calm voice I am imagining, David, that's you and what you did with Bathsheba. And David's response wasn't what you would think it would be. He didn't say, who are you to come into the king's presence and talk to me like this, or to make me out as a villain? He breaks down, weeps, and repents before Nathan and God. But there's consequences. Bathsheba, the child that was with Bathsheba, she would give birth to that baby, but that baby would die days after. And David mourned the death of that baby. Later marries Bathsheba and has a few more children, one being famously known as King Solomon, who wrote a couple books of the Bible, wisest man to ever live. But enters the dark spots, the dark age of King David, around 50 years old. He wanders a little bit. He wanders. It isn't as shiny as you would think. But this sets a trajectory off now for his family because of the consequences of his sin. It changes how his kingdomship would end. Because we go from him marrying Bathsheba, Solomon born. He then continues a little bit of the dark side, repents for this one sin, but then God says, don't count the people. David takes a census, because census is for kings to tell you how mighty you are. Look at what we've done. And so he counts the people. And when he counts the people, God says, listen, because you did that, you have 3 options here. And lays out before him, here's your 3 options. You sinned. I told you not to count the people. You did it anyways, and here's the deal. An army can come and wipe you out. 2, insects can come and eat your crops, and gives this list. And God, at the end of the day, he chooses whatever God is involved in. Because his answer was, God, I know that you will have mercy. If an army comes in here, they might not have mercy and grace, but I know, God, you are a God of mercy. So I side with whatever one, you're the one involved. That's the one I want. Wise. And he knew he made a mess. So from 60 to 70 years old, because he dies at the age of 70, around there, He's got to live with the consequences of his adultery and murder and census. 3 big sins we're aware of in his life. And in the process, around 60 years old, in the middle of him repenting, he turns back to his first love, and that is Christ. Or not Christ at the time, but God. Mm-hmm. He turns to him and looks around and again on his rooftop going, I'm in a palace, a structure that people are in awe of, but God, you're in a tent, the tabernacle. This thing that's been around since Moses or Abraham is awful. You need a permanent structure. You need something that would capture your power and majesty. And so David purchases land and then asks God, can I build you a temple that would make every other god in this area, this region, look puny? And the response from God was, you've had too much bloodshed in your lifetime. You cannot do it. But David's heart was, I want to honor you in the last of my life. So he purchased the land and he begins to make preparations for Solomon to be able to make the temple. Now we're going to finish off and we're going to come back to this spot right here. Later on over here, we're going to get to my notes. But as David continues to reap the consequences for his murder, his census, and his adultery, I'm going to pause here. No one wants to talk this. God forgives us of our sins, but the consequences still exist. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know, if we would like to know what our consequences are, what they're attached to. Would that make it easier for us to sin less, you think?
I mean, if you were told all the people you would hurt and how much it would affect your children and et cetera, maybe you would have a little bit of a, maybe I shouldn't do that, but I mean, temptation is still real. And also that's just not how life works. So,
Right, but if it worked,
to get that.
If you sinned, immediately you lost a finger, you'd probably start sinning
that's
less.
What you're saying. I see. I thought you were saying like if you knew the consequences.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
Sure.
I'm just making it more immediate.
Yeah.
Right, I think you'd stop doing something that I only got one finger left. I'm not going to do that again.
Right. Yeah.
But you don't know the consequences in your life. And sometimes I've recently been praying, like, God, how do I know it's not just life happening or something I did wrong and these are the consequences? Mm-hmm. Because doesn't it make it puts the weight to what I did, I think. When you recognize some of the consequences are attached to it, it puts weight to what you did. I don't know if, I know David knew a lot of these things. David knew that the little baby was going to die because it was told to him, but he still prayed for God to change his mind.
Oh, yeah.
In that moment. It's tremendous read. Mm-hmm. David, because of all of that mess, one of his sons, Absalom, rebels against his kingdom and tries to overthrow David. And it's a mess. Like, you should read it. Absalom, eventually, he is fighting his dad, makes a little army and fights his dad. And Absalom had really long hair. You know how he dies? Gets his hair caught in a tree.
Oh.
And his horse continues to ride away.
About him cutting his hair.
Yeah, his hair was, like, when you read through the scriptures, it talks about how Absalom, David's son's hair, was awesome, but it gets hooked into a tree and he's stuck, hanging there. And someone came up and killed him.
Wow. Because
David wouldn't do it. And so somebody else killed his son. But he also had another Sheba? Also, is that how you pronounce it?
It says Sheba's rebellion.
Is another person that's trying to overthrow David's kingdom before 70 years old. So if his family becomes a hot mess. He's got a kid that sleeps with his own daughter, which is wild, and does it. Another one of them sleeps with another person on the rooftop so the whole city can see. It's wild. What up to the age of 60, you have this version of David, and then 60 because David did stupid stuff and committed some really raunchy sins. Some of the things that God said to him is because of what you did in private, I'm going to do in front of the whole nation.
Like with his family members?
Yeah. It's pretty wild. I just see you keep thumbing through your Bible. What are you trying to do?
Everything you're saying is like in the order here. It's cool. It's cool to have my Bible open while you're talking.
Yeah, I just see Lily flipping the pages.
And it's,
hopefully cool. she'll correct me if
No, this is cool.
You will. So.
The Rebellion of Sheba.
Yeah.
Chapter 20.
Big deal. Messy. No dad wants that, because you dream of handing something off, not being taken from your kids.
Right.
And so this makes the nation on pins and needles of what's going to happen. Who's the next one to be in charge? Are we going to just fall apart as a kingdom? And so you continue as David is trying to figure out his family, but also set up the temple. He reorganizes the Levitical divisions, which is very important because of the temple that was going to come. He's trying to make sure that he's honoring God in this season of his life. He's not taking the distractions personally and forgetting God. He's continuing to do these things. As he's doing that, he's starting to get older and begins to appoint King Solomon is the next king, which sets off a whole nother season of the kingdom of Israel. And David, I mean, for all the dads out there, this is where you got to read. Okay, David, for Solomon's sake, does a pretty astounding thing. Okay, and so I want to come back to First Chronicles chapter 28. Chronicles is a little bit of a repeat of First and Second Kings and First and Second Samuel, but with more details most of the time. So it's an add-on. So you got to read all of these books together to get the whole story. If you have a chronological Bible, it's really fun to read this because you get the Chronicles right next to the moment in Kings or in First Samuel or something. But in First Chronicles 28, this is what it says: "My brothers and my people, it was my desire to build a temple where the ark of the Lord's covenant, God's footstool, could rest permanently. I made the necessary preparations for building it, but God said to me, 'You must not build a temple to honor my name, for you are a warrior and you have shed much blood.'" So God put the kibosh on David's desire. David even moved on the desire, but when he was met with God saying, "No, you're not the one to do it," he figured I would set up and make all the preparations. I know I'm not the one. Love this story.
That would be hard to hear.
Oh, yeah. When it's like, it's one thing when you process something as it's a negative and a bad thing. Another thing when it is processed as, no,
Yeah.
I'm doing a good thing for you.
But also, I know I deserve this.
Yeah, I might.
You know, like, and I don't know if he had that heart. Maybe he felt like he deserved it because he maybe cleaned himself up, but
it wasn't, but it's the bloodshed as a warrior here. I don't take it as a bloodshed of murder. I think his life had been taken.
You are a warrior and have shed much blood.
Right. So I think, yes, the murder's in that, but I think it's that David fought hundreds of battles and killed tens of thousands of men. I mean, here's the story I skipped over earlier, but with Michal, to get her, Saul said, "I need 100 Philistines' foreskins." Well, you don't just tap some guy on the shoulder and say, "Hey, can I have your foreskin?" That's just not happening. The way King Saul knew the only way for David to do this is to kill the Philistines and bring them back. And the likelihood of David killing 100 Philistines, unlikely. So it was like, well, go do this in my hopes is you die, and then eliminates one of my problems in the hands of my enemy. But David brought back a sack of foreskins and threw them at his king's feet and says, "Here you go. 100. Actually, I think he does 200. I think he does more. I know he does more than what was asked. Here are 200 foreskins at your feet." Could you imagine that? And plops out a foreskin on his sandal toe. Too much imagery. And if you have young people and they're asking you what a foreskin is, good luck. But best not to Google that. So we're going to go to 1 Chronicles 29 now, and we're going to go to a prayer that David has on the other side of knowing that he doesn't get to build the temple. He doesn't even get to see the temple. Then the king David turned in 1 Chronicles 29. Then the king David turned to the entire assembly and said, "My son Solomon, who God has clearly chosen as the next king of Israel, is still young and inexperienced. The work ahead of him is enormous, for the temple will be built. He will build is not for mere mortals. It is for the Lord God himself. Using every resource at my command, I have gathered as much as I could for building the temple of my God. Now there is enough gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, as well as great quantities of oxen, other precious stones, costly jewels, and all kinds of fine stones and marble." David's saying, I've stored all this stuff up. It's sitting. I've collected all of this stuff. I don't want you to skip over something because we're getting to peek behind old David's heart. And it is, the work ahead of him is enormous, so I recognize what my son's going to go through. Therefore, I used every resource of my command. I've gathered as much as I could for the building of the temple of my God. He was saying, God is my priority. His kingdom come, not my will be done. He's not writing it like that. David doesn't write it like that. But Jesus comes and says, hey, you should pray God, your kingdom come, your will be done. David is doing exactly that here. I am taking all of my things at my command and focusing in building God's kingdom. If you want God to say, I found you a woman, a man after God's own heart, you'll do everything I want you to do, then you best be building his kingdom in every capacity. Everything at your command. Better be building Jesus' kingdom, not your kingdom, is the way we say it. David continues. He's talking to a group of people. And now because of my devotion to the temple of my God, I am giving all of my own private treasures of gold and silver to help in the construction. David goes on not just saying my resources, the arm, it's easy, right? Oh, it's easy. If you have people underneath you, you just tell them, go do it. You don't have to do it. They go do it. You feel good about it. But no, we then come, David says, I'm taking my own private treasures of gold and silver to help with the construction. I'm giving of my resources, his money. He's not talking about time here, folks. This is why it's a big thing. Man and woman after God's own heart, you're tithing. You're giving a portion of your money, your green stuff, to building Jesus' kingdom. There's no way around it. It's packed right in here. David's little heart right here is coming out. He goes into his treasury, and you're going, well, he's got more than me. No, it said he gave his entire treasure. I'm giving out of my own private treasure of gold, silver, to help with the construction. In addition to building materials I've already collected for his holy temple, I'm donating more than 112 tons of gold. What? 262 tons of refined silver. What?
That's so much.
To be used for overlaying the walls of the building and for the other gold and silver work to be done by the craftsmen. Now then, who will follow my example and give offerings to the Lord today? Leadership.
Your turn.
Yeah, but he's like, good luck outgiving me. Guys.
No, it's good. I like this.
Tons. We're not talking mamby-pamby weenie amounts here. Tons. And then he says, all right, go. You want your kids to give? You want your kids to volunteer? You want your kids to see needs and meet needs? Are you doing it enormously? Are you doing it in levels that are astonishing? Because that's what David did. I wrote it in my notes. David knew that he could not outgive God. That's a churchy principle, but you see it here. He's like, I'm giving it all. Mm-hmm. He understands. David understands this, that he understands his days are numbered. He can't die with this stuff. He can't build his kingdom and take it with him. It's all gone. When he dies, he's just a little blip on the little radar of life. I'm going to give my wealth and my stuff, my things, my tangible things to the use of his kingdom. My gold, my silver, my palace, my people, my donkeys, my camels, my whatever it is, going to build something that's going to outlast me and be better than what I could ever do. David knew that all of this stuff was for God's use. Is all the things you own for God's use? Your house, your second house, your third house, your fourth car. Or are you going, well, they can take the beater. I would never give it. This car's too nice. Heart check. I get it when you got new stuff. You're like, really want to baby it, and then once you get a scratch on it, sure, Lily, you can drive my car. But if it's got no scratches, I'm not giving it to Lily.
Just don't get new stuff then.
Just don't. Yeah. But I love how David leads by example. Are you, in every area in your life where you find irritation by people's lack of love, are you leading by example in enormous ways? Back to the story of David. 1 Chronicles 29, verse 6. Then the family leaders, the leaders of the tribes of Israel, the generals and captains of the armies, and the kings, administrative officers, all gave willingly for the construction of the temple of God. Why? Because they knew they were giving to something that would outlast them for generations. We're reading about what their accolades right now, what they did. Not because they were wealthy. We have no idea how much money they made. We just know it's by what they gave. They were known for. Listen how much they gave. Now, I got to correlate really fast here. Did they outgive David? They gave 188 tons of gold. How many tons did David give? David gave 112. So barely. A group of people almost barely outgave David. 10,000 gold coins, 375 tons of silver, 675 tons of bronze, and 3,750 tons tons of iron. They also contributed numerous precious stones, which were deposited in the treasury of the house of the Lord under the care of an individual. The people rejoiced over the offerings, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. And King David was filled with joy. When we give in abundancy, people, when we give abundance in our time, abundance in our resources of our stuff, when somebody says to me and Holly, hey, we have a secondary cabin we'd like to give your family for 1 week. Do you know how much we rejoice in that generosity and have forever been changed because of that? That has happened to us a handful of times, and we'll never forget it. Somebody saying, oh man, you're a pastor, you're further than kingdom, let's give you a break, here's our cabin. Now, I'm not fishing for anybody to do that. That's not what I'm trying to suggest. I'm saying when we see people do this, what it does in my heart, it makes me turn to God and go, look at that individual. They have a lot, been trusted with a lot, and look at what they're doing with it. They're looking for people to go, here, use my stuff. It's brought me joy. Now I want you to have joy with it. David's doing that right here with the people that are giving. It's turning David into worshiping because of their ginormous offerings.
That's cool. When
people give at Unlocked Church in a capacity that's huge, or often you start going, man, we rejoice. This isn't a giving lesson, everybody. Somebody goes, oh, this took a turn. We're just looking at David's life. He's a man after God's own heart. Is it true, Lily, that there's some scripture in there that says where your money is or your treasure is also your heart?
Yeah, Jesus says that in the Sermon on the Mount.
Can you look that up really quick so
Sure.
we're not... Because I think people think pastors make that up to make it like push people over. But it's an indicator where the majority of resources are going. When you look at a budget, if majority goes to all of you throughout the year, it's on a line item. I'm not saying the end of the budget, but it's a line item. Okay, this gets majority of my money. Maybe it's your debt gets majority of your money. Well, where's your heart? Your heart's in the debt.
It's in Matthew 6.
Matthew 6, because that's the Sermon on the Mount. Thank you, Matthew, for recording the Sermon on the Mount. One of the only authors in the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that records this. Lily's going to it very slowly.
Matthew 6:21.
Okay. 21, my favorite number, everyone. Okay, Lily, read it.
Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
I think one of the best things we can do, and I've thought this from 16 years old-ish or till now. If you're writing a timeline like we've been putting in front of you today, somewhere along there, I decided that my kingdom would not be priority. Sometimes it creeps into that, but it was like, God, I want to build something that'll outlast me, that people in generations will be blessed to find you, and I think that's the local church. I've thought that from 16 years old. Giving to the local church allows you to continue to further the kingdom, to when you pass away, that church continues to be a light in the darkness and do great work. It's just true. Somebody's got to examine yourself. So here's a sneak peek into David, his heart, who he was, as we pick up in 1 Chronicles 29, verse 10. Then David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly. O Lord, the God of our ancestor Israel, may you be praised forever and ever. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, and the majesty. Everything in heaven and on earth is yours, O Lord, and this is your kingdom. We adore you as the one who is over all things. Wealth and honor come from you alone. For you rule over everything. Power and might are in your hand, and at your discretion people are made great and given strength. David is speaking to his people, his leaders. God is sovereign. God is in control. Stop whining about your plight in life. Stop whining about your position in life. Some of that is your fault. Some of that is your lack of work ethic, lack of a kick system to get going. Some of it is just the way God's distributing his power and wealth. It's just the way it goes. It's the sovereignty of God. I don't understand it. And don't tell me if you had that person's wealth, you do good things with it, because right now the wealth you have, you still aren't doing it. If you don't do it with a little, you're not going to do it with a lot, folks. That's just the true thing. You can whine about it, wimp about it. You can mutter about all you want. The truth is, if you don't do it with a little, you'll never do it with a lot. And God gives out at his own discretion. I'm okay with that. Would I love Unlocked Church to be ginormous church, big impact, Sure. But that is not at my discretion, folks. and I'm okay with what God wants to do. I'm going to take care of this church as a pastor. I'm going to try to see that it's fit and healthy and growing to be able to be ready if God ever opens the doors and just blows the doors off this thing, that we're ready to do that. But I'm not going to whine and complain like, why'd that pastor get more people on Easter Sunday than me? I don't give a rip. I don't. I want it to be that, God, you're in control, you're sovereign, you give out the strength and you give out wealth at your discretion.
That's cool.
And here's the deal. Earthly kings, earthly presidents do not give credit of their success or their power to something other than themselves. It just wouldn't be done. It's not done in the history books. Yeah. And here's David giving all his credit in his position by God alone. Back to the story in 1 Corinthians 29:13. Oh, our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I and who are my people that we could give anything to you? Everything we have has come from you, and we give you only what you first gave us. We are here for only a moment, visitors and strangers in a land as our ancestors were before us. Our days on earth are like a passing shadow, gone as soon without a trace. See, the minute we realize our days are numbered, we get busy doing something that matters. And it tends to be later in life you start focusing on that instead of when you're in your 40s or 30s, 20s. You don't even think about it when you're a teenager, and that's fine. But when you become, 16 above, it tends to see people are going, what have I done with my life? What am I doing? I've built my kingdom for 60 plus years. What if an individual from the age of 9 years old was about building God's kingdom? It might look like David's messy, complicated, but a man or a woman after God's own heart. Wrapping up. 1 Chronicles 29. Remember, this is in the middle of David's life, a complicated life. Grown-up virgin Sunday school lesson. We talked about grown-up lesson. We talked about foreskins. We talked about sex outside of marriage. We talked about sex on rooftops today. That was not on any flannel graph, Lily, when I was...
No.
It would be very inappropriate.
Yeah.
Probably borderline inappropriate.
We grew it up for sure.
1 Corinthians 29:16. O Lord our God, even these materials we have gathered to build a temple to honor your holy name comes from you. It all belongs to you. I know, my God, that you examine our hearts and rejoice when you find integrity there. You know I have done all of this with good motives, and I have watched your people offer their gifts willingly and joyously. O Lord, the God of our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, make your people always want to obey you. See to it that their love for you never changes. Give my son Solomon the wholehearted desire to obey all your commands, laws, and decrees, and do everything necessary to build the temple for which I have made these preparations. Then David said to the whole assembly, give praise to the Lord your God. And in the entire assembly praised the Lord, the God of their ancestors. Then he bowed low and knelt before the Lord and the king.
So I love this.
This is David. Like this is like David going to his deathbed stuff, guys. This isn't David in his prime. This is David reflecting on his entire life, trying to speak. He didn't know it was going to be recorded and be spoke to this many generations, but trying to speak into the generations to come in his kingdom of Israel, trying to fire up Solomon of like, don't forget these things. Remember, it's the motives of your heart that God looks at. David's like, look at my heart, God. It's after you. I did not give the amount I gave so people would see how much I gave. I'm giving because I am a man after your own heart. Can that be said one day of you? The decision is yours to make a shift, to change the direction of your life, to begin to maybe open up your wallet, open up your time, and go, okay, I'm going to serve greatly for the local church. I'm going to give to the local church. I'm going to make sure that this church that I attend outlives me to make generational impacts, that one day people are talking about what this church did in the Twin Cities or what this church did online in YouTube because of a bunch of generous people that gave enormously to build his kingdom, not our kingdom. It's a toughie. I mean, we stand on the shoulder of a church that's 105 years old in Austin, Texas. They've given thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, probably $100,000 to Unlock Church over the years. We stand on their shoulders. And I have no idea if 105 years ago, that had been like early 1900s kind of stuff. Before World War I, the churches started. They could even imagine that they would donate a studio to project the gospel through the airwaves, wirelessly, and you could see us in color. And right? Like, they had no idea. But we're standing on their shoulders because people like David gave because they were men and women of God's own heart. Now, here's the question. Does this move you to want to worship God more? Does this move you to want to have a moment of pause? If not, we're going to give you a moment of reflection.
We are an imperfect people. We struggle, fail, and fall short, just like everyone else. We wander this world, one step at a time, moment by moment, place to place, walking the path laid out before us. We strive for righteousness, but miss the mark. We seek God, but lose our focus. We want to love deeply, but often forget how that works. We are a broken people, made whole only by the hand of God. In the end, our life is about one thing: Jesus. And although we don't pursue him perfectly, we still pursue him. One day at a time.
Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for this story of David. Thank you that even in the midst of his decision-making being poor or mad kings chasing after him, that he always went back to you. Thank you that he never turned his back on you. And just the example he set for us, and that we get to have his story in scripture to be inspired by, to be challenged by. God, I pray for those of us who are feeling challenged today to increase you in our lives, that we would make changes so that you can fit. May we give more. May we spend more time serving our church, the local church, God, that you can use us to have an impact on your kingdom the way David did. May we not think that we're too small to not have as great an impact, God. We know you use everyone. And if you used a shepherd boy, you can use us. So may we just move in the direction. If there are people listening today that don't know which steps to take, I pray that they reach out and we can just work together to grow your kingdom and partner with you in that. And thank you for that opportunity. And thank you for just this series, and may it continue to grow up all of our faith. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Lil.
Yeah.
Great prayer. Again, thank you for everybody hanging with us today. It felt a little bit more lecture-y, like a professor.
I loved it. I liked it.
Even you kind of knew where it was all headed. You got the stories.
Oh,
here.
I did know, but it's always just better when you get to experience it. It was great. And at the end, he dies after reigning for 40 years.
Right. We didn't put the exclamation.
I don't know if we actually played that last slide, but he reigned for 40 years. That's pretty cool.
40 years. 7.5 of those was just part of Judah or Israel. He reigned there.
Right.
Again, if you're looking for a fun book to read in the Bible, start with 1 Samuel and you'll go, it's wild. It's wild. You're like, why? Like, you can understand why you would get the David and Goliath story and not all the other things, because there's so many components in there that are well beyond PG-13. Yeah. And so thank you for hanging with us today. If you would love to give out of your generosity to Unlock Church, we do make it really simple. Some suggest once you've done it once, you can do it under 30 seconds. It is very, very simple. If you have a smartphone, you can grab your smartphone. You text the number 77977, the word unlock in the subject, hit send. If it's your first time, you'll get a reply message which you hit the link. You'll fill it out with your name, address, credit card, debit card, the amount, and you hit send. You can set that up. You can set up an account where you're a regular giver, and that's where it turns into 30 seconds or less. You can go to unlockchurch.com/give. You can also find our address on there if you'd like to mail a check and stuff. Your resources are helping us spread the gospel, the good news. We have camps coming up. Your resources are impacting the next generation. So we're very humbled to have you give to this church as we are excited what God's doing here in the Twin Cities and here digitally. We've got brand new small group curriculum kicking off tomorrow. Love Does. You can pick up that copy anywhere digitally and immediately read. Do you know by any chance how many chapters they should have read by tomorrow?
None. You just need the study guide tomorrow. If you don't have it, jump in anyway. But you guys are going to go through the first part of the study guide week 1. And then at the end, there's further reading in the actual book.
Love Does is phenomenal. It really is. It gives a lot of handles to what are Jesus principles and how to walk them out. And so Love Does, easy read, tons of stories of application of Jesus principles. Don't miss it. Jump in. My mom from Illinois is the leader of that small group. Jen and Dan from Florida are in there. Marnie's in there. Katie is in there. Dwayne is in there.
Yeah, someone locally from here joining the online one.
So it's heaps of people. It really is the most diverse globally small group we have, because everybody else here are all from Minnesota. But here we have Florida. I almost said Montana. It'd be cool to have somebody from Montana. But Michigan. We have Washington, Illinois. We have just Minnesota now. So it's cool. Jump in. The easy way to do that is you can go to our website again, and you can connect through there. There's a link there that takes you to a go-to meeting. It's really simple, everybody. So I think we put the thing on the screen with the QR code.
Yeah.
But we can put it up there again. You're going to screenshot that, take a picture. That link will get you straight to connect with us, and we'll get you the link. Okay, everybody? And so you don't want to miss that. And then we have an info meeting for our first mission trip, which is in May on the 16th of March, is it?
Yep, it's March 16th. We'll get that up there. If you're interested, we have a slide for that. If you're interested and you don't live in Minnesota, the meeting is in person, but we can make sure that there's a way for you to call in so you can hear all the details.
Yeah, we'll just put a go-to meeting on, and you'll be in the room. It won't be a digital meeting per se, but you would be able to be in the room and be able to hear the vision and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited about that.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, or if you have any other questions, need prayer, want some next steps on how to really get involved in what we talked about today, we have a phone number that you can text really with any question, anything you need, and we'll get back to you by Tuesday with our answers. So there it is, 651-276-8797.
Boom! That's it. All of it, folks. Hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have full desk and thing of that nature. But we will see. We do know that next week, if you want to know, you want to cheat, you want to get a little bit what angle we're going to go, I think it's Noah's Ark. I think that's the Sunday school lesson we're going to take and grow up. Joey actually is doing it.
Awesome.
So we're excited to hear what he has to say about Noah's Ark, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us. Lily, thanks for being here with your 80s
that was great. Thank
sweatshirt.
You. Yeah.
Thanks for putting together these cool little things.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's great. We should we're going to put this in completion in the email, a place for you to get these.
Yeah.
Because I think it's fun to see it all together. Okay, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Stay out of trouble. We love you all. Adios.
Bye.